Good morning, guys and girls. I'm going to be out today going to the doctor, but your classes all have something specific, so this video is going to tell you what to do. All classes need to take the Figurative Language Image Quiz on Edpuzzle. It is not going to appear before classes start. I won't make it live until that point. But you need to take this and you need to do it independently. There are 24 images. Each is worth half a point. So it's 12 points. It should be relatively easy. You need to do this on your own. You need to not look at your neighbors. And you do not need sound. There is sound behind it, but you do not need sound. So since we're in the Mac lab, turn your sound off. When you finish that, you've got a couple other things to do. Notice that it's only set for 1:44. Obviously it'll take you longer than that because that's how long the actual video runs. But when you're done, it'll just submit and you'll see your score out of 24 because there are 24 different questions here, and divide that by 2 to get 12. For periods 1, 2, and 6, you are supposed to finish your analysis, your explication of, hold on, I'm going to pause it, I'm going to cough, of Rudyard Kipling's If. And so once you've got that done, you can take a look. I will make this one public so you can check and see whether your ideas match up with mine, but that's not something that they need to match. Every one of us can have our own interpretations, but if you want to see what I thought, I'll put this up on Classroom for you as well as just in an announcement for you to be able to see. Your ideas are perfectly valid, so don't think you have to have mine. But at the very bottom, I went too far, there is the prompt. I'm going to cough again. Okay, so the prompt here is Rudyard Kipling's poem If can be interpreted many different ways as counter novel to Call the Wild. Compare and contrast the themes in Call the Wild and If. Use textual evidence from the poem and book to support your claims. When comparing and contrasting, be sure to use quotes from both texts to clearly establish your claim. You're not writing an essay today. You are setting up another organizer, like we did previously. Now, periods 3 and 5, we started this yesterday. Periods 1, 2, and 6, this is where you need to now go. This is also available on Google Classroom. So, you go into your classroom, you scroll down, to the Graphic Organizer for Literary Analysis, Comparing and Contrasting Two Text. So when you click this, you will get your own copy to start working on. So you need to look for this one, dated January 31st. The prompt will not be in there. You have to copy and paste it from your If analysis, but you copy and paste it in. Then you come up with your own thesis statement. Remember, it should be in Q&A format. This is my thesis statement. The important thing to remember with a compare and contrast TDA, text-dependent analysis, is that you need to both compare and contrast. That means find similarities and differences, not just one or the other. So you'll notice the organizer is set up slightly differently. Now, these are just some examples that I personally have. You don't have to think these things, but we're going to go over those later. A, C, C, E. That's different from the last one. Last graphics organizer that you had. There's 2 C's. Why? Because you're supposed to be comparing and contrasting, so you need to point out specifically where or what in each text you plan to compare and or contrast. And the way I set mine up is that I'm going to show the similarities and differences in my first part. Their structural development. How are they structured similarly? How are they structured differently? So this one's going to go back and forth. My second A is going to focus on the different ways that they convey the theme. So this is going to be all ways that they're different. And then this is going to show how they both use figurative language similarly to convey the theme. So what's really important is not that you have the same breakdown that I do. That's not your goal. What's really important is that you take information from your actual analyses from here and from your chapter 3, and you'll actually put quotes from the text and from the other text. Whatever you choose to do as text 1, that should remain consistent. I chose the poem to always be my text 1. That way you don't get confused. I chose the novel to always be my text 2. So for my next citations, I'm going to have poem, poem, novel, novel. That's just to help be consistent. Now I want you to pay close attention to the E that I have here. Remember I said that my first paragraph was going to show the structural development. So I'm starting by looking at the author's craft, really. So I went back and I changed this just a little. So if I'm talking about how the theme is going to be set up with the structure, my E is most important, remember that. And I provided extra information here to try to talk you through this. But as you have to provide a detailed explanation, you actually put your text citations into your E. A lot of you forgot that on the last one. So here's an example of a good E. In both texts, the theme of overcoming adversity parallels the journey from boyhood to manhood, or in Buck's case, from puppyhood to doghood. This is important to the theme itself because, as we are young, we are generally shielded from harm. It's only when we begin to venture out on our own, whether by choice or by forced circumstance, that we are truly open to adversity that we must face on our own. The poem If is written from a parent to child, presumably a father to son. This is easily indicated in the final 2 lines of the poem. Yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Pause for a second. You'll know that I put stanza 4 there. That's actually something that I would put in here because you want your reader to be able to look back to stanza 4 if they have a copy of the poem. Since these lines indicate the intended audience as a child with the word son, the reader of the poem can infer he would not yet have faced many difficulties in his life. So again, I introduce my thought, I put the quote in, I tell my reader what to think about it. Then I switch, and because it's a compare-contrast piece, I want to use words that are going to let my reader know I am comparing, as in finding something similar. The same can be said of Buck, the protagonist in The Call of the Wild. As noted in Chapter 1, during the 4 years since his puppyhood, he had lived the life of a sated aristocrat. He had fine pride in himself, was even a trifle egotistical as a country gentleman sometimes must sometimes become because of their insular situation, but he saved himself by not becoming a mere pampered house dog. The story is set up for the reader to know Buck has lived a good life, safe from the troubles of the world, ever since he was born. This is indicated with during the 4 years since his puppyhood he lived the life of a state aristocrat. I tell them something, and then I point out where in the text they can actually make that connection. Then I explain what an aristocrat is, because people don't know. This is also indicated with his life being called insular. So this is building my case. This here, I'm breaking down the quote up there, and I am building my case. Then I go on to tell them, okay, here's how to interpret it. Therefore, he also would not have had to face any difficulties before being dognapped from his home. So, oh no, I hate when that happens. So, at that point, I've made my connection. I've told them, my reader, what to think, and now I have to hit a home run, if you will. I have to tell them why I made this connection, how it's similar or different. The importance of this parallel between the two texts is significant. Both the son in the poem and Buck in the novel would be ignorant of the ways of the world and therefore more susceptible to adversity due to a lack of experience. So I'm telling them, hey, this inexperience that the author set them up for, necessary for the theme. Boom. So your job, when you finish your quiz, is to get started working on this. The goal is to have this graphic organizer completed by the end of this week.